Hello, I'm David Hunt and welcome to The Art Hunter. My guest today is an award-winning film and television director and screenwriter, of course she is because she does it all. The Guardian wrote that her cinematic body of work is among the most hard-hitting bodies in works in Australian cinema. Her second film, Only the Brave, won several awards, setting her up for the feature-length film Head On. Yep, I'm talking about Head On. Can't wait to talk to her about that. But the problem is, the film divided the Greek community here in Australia, but then went on to win many awards around the world. Television, she has directed episodes for The Secret Life of Us. Bring it back. All set here in St Kilda, where we film The Art Hunter. The second episode of the current ABC show Fires, the mini-series The Hunting, plus others. Passionate about knowledge and teaching, directing to new generations. Good on her for doing that. And yet, of course, there's a book that she's involved in. Anna, hello, and thank you for coming along, and congratulations on your brilliant career already.
Mark, thank you. That's a wonderful way to introduce me, so thank you for that. It's great to be here.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah, like I was so excited when the opportunity came along that to have somebody like you. All right, let's start talking about it, because you didn't go out, leave school and go, into film school, and tell us your little bit of a journey there.
Well, I didn't come to filmmaking until a little bit later. I think when I hit the age of 28, perhaps it was my Saturn return, where I figured that all of a sudden I was working as a lawyer, which I really loved doing, but I had this secret passion to become a filmmaker, something that I had buried for a very long period of time.
Had you dabbled in it?
Not at all.
So it was just always sitting there. Wow.
I hadn't dabbled in it at all. That's how submerged it really was.
Well, how scary is that? Your parents must have been shaking their fist at you going, what are you doing to us? We're going to die.
Oh, look, I think they freaked out when I said, look, I'm throwing in this law career that I've spent all these years, sort of establishing, and I'm now going to become an artist. I'm going to become a filmmaker. Look, they did freak out. But the thing that sustained me through all those years was watching great films. I became a sort of an art house fanatic at the age of 14. When I was 14, 15, my older sister used to take me to, in those days, the Union House of Melbourne University.
Oh, okay.
Where they would run, art house films, and that's where I started seeing great European films. It was also a period of time when great independent American film was happening as well. And I just lapped it up. I just found that this was the most exciting place to be. So even when I was studying law, I'd often go and sit in on all the lectures for the cinema studies students and things, because that was 20 times more interesting than sitting through law lectures, let me tell you. So I kind of kept this burning passion a secret, and at a certain point, and I got together with my partner Mira Robertson, and she really encouraged me, I think, to kind of go, well, look, if you really want to do this, now's the time.
So you went back to uni?
So I went back to uni.
How was it as a mature age?
It was pretty weird, because I'd just gone from this very high-powered legal job, with secretaries and officers and all of that, and there I was back at what was then Swinburne film school. It had just become VCA, Film and TV School, but we were still in the old Hawthorn campus.
Oh, okay.
And so, I turn up there and everything's kind of, stuck together with gaffer tape. Nothing works. There's no money for anything. And so I went from one extreme to the other. But I had the most extraordinary year. I learnt so much and I had the best time. And I came out of that year and thought, well, look, I think I can give this a go now.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so you did a short film to begin with, and what was that called?
I did my student film was called Andamusi, and that was a 38-minute black and white film, and I thought it was so terrible that I had to give myself one more go to try and redeem myself a little bit. Not that it is terrible, but you know, it was a shock to kind of make something and go, oh, this is what it is and this is what it's like.
Yeah.
But even so, I think there was a voice in there that was sort of starting to emerge, and that really didn't get full expression until coming out of film school. I made a featurette called Only the Brave.
Yep.
And that was the film that really, I guess, brought me into the limelight. It was a film that...
won awards?
It won so many awards. It won awards here. It did extraordinary, not business, but it played to great acclaim around the world. So it was invited to the Venice Film Festival. It was selected at Venice. And then it went to the San Francisco Gay and Lesbian International Film Festival. And that was probably one of the most amazing moments of my life, because it was the first time that I had experienced what it felt like to be a filmmaker screening to an international audience, but also screening to our audiences, my audience. Yeah. And because in the film, it's a story about two, Greek Australian working class girls. There is a lesbian sort of subtext in the story, and the film was so welcomed by the women and a few men who saw it at the time that it was voted best film at the festival. Wow. So that, and it wasn't just the gay community and the queer community at that time that embraced the film. It then went on to really be screened all around the world. It played at many festivals, and then remarkably for a 1-hour film, it got a theatrical release here and played, fairly successfully.
Yeah.
And so that was the film that really put me on the map.
Right. Okay, so you thought you could have just gone, oh, this is easy, and just floated through. But then you picked, was a book. You changed the name for the film. What was the book?
Loaded by Christos Tsiolkas. And the only reason we couldn't keep the name Loaded was because there was another film called Loaded at the time that was in fact played at Venice.
Oh, okay.
And so there's all this copyright stuff around film titles. So we were precluded from using that title. So we had to come up with another title. And we found that after a lot of, scratching of our heads, Head On felt like the right title for the film. And I have to say, in retrospect, if I had have known how difficult it was going to be to adapt Christos's novel, perhaps we wouldn't have ever done it. It was really challenging.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So did you get involved in the screen?
Oh, absolutely, Yep. Yeah. So I co-wrote the screenplay with Mira and also with Andrew Bavell.
Now, tell us that process. Do you actually enjoy the screenwriting side of it?
Look, I did at the time, and it was a really important part of the development of the screenplay that I was also involved, because I was the only one who was Greek of the trio. Yeah. But I also think that what was critical to the success of the script and then the making of the film is it's very visual, it's very cinematic, and it needed also a director's eye involved in that writing process. So sculpting the journey of Ari in a cinematic way was really, really critical. But I also acknowledge that without Andrew and Mira, we would never have done, or perhaps been as successful in making what I think was a really great screenplay from a very challenging book, because it's written in first-person narration and it's all inside Ari's head.
Oh, okay.
So we had to find a way of taking all those inner thoughts and expressing them in some way.
Because that was going to be my next question. Well, why was it hard to adapt? You've just explained it.
Yeah.
A ballsy like film as your first feature film.
Yep.
Were you nervous about making it, or were you really knew what you were doing, and especially how involved you were in this screenwriting of it as well? Tell us, because this is a lesson for all those young filmmakers out there.
I was so passionate about making that film. I can't tell you how I felt that it was such an important story for me to tell. I felt like I knew it from the inside.
Yep.
It was an incredible challenge, but also one where, I don't know, perhaps when you're younger, you're much more inventive, prepared to take risks, because actually you've got nothing to lose.
True.
So that's the first thing.
You've got your future career at risk.
I didn't think about it as a career.
Okay.
I only thought about what I felt I wanted to make in terms of that film.
Okay.
And in fact, if anything, I've never thought about my career. I've never thought about a career.
Good on
I've
you.
only ever thought about, do I really want to do this? Is this story relevant to me and therefore maybe relevant to other people?
Yeah.
That's the first thing. And the second thing is that it's to do with a sensibility as well. You know, it's a very bold and, yes, very courageous film and very risky film.
Yeah.
But it was also a response to the fact that I'd never really seen full-on queer content being made in any kind of mainstream sense in this country. I'd never seen Greek-Australian experiences really depicted in a contemporary sense. And I also felt that it was really important for filmmakers like me who are outsiders, who come from a diverse background, who are migrant, working class, queer, to actually start to tell stories that also reflected something about us.
Yeah.
And I wasn't seeing that in Australian cinema at the time.
Yeah.
So that was also a really big motivator.
No, you weren't seeing it. It just wasn't happening.
Just wasn't.
But trailblazing what you've done here, and as I actually said in the little intro, is that it divided the Greek community, because who stars in it to begin with? Who's the actor that stars?
Alex Dimitriadis.
Who was already getting a real name for himself Australia-wide as the TV series that he did. How did he take, when you approached him, what was his thought pattern on it, like doing, like playing a gay man and the coming out, when he's had this, like beautiful ride at this stage through a TV series?
Look, I think Alex at the time was fairly torn. He was riding high. He'd been in Heartbreak Kid. He was in Heartbreak High. He was really, a kind of a young actor of the moment.
Yeah. And
then suddenly to be asked to do a very full-on, confronting role, I think was pretty challenging for him. But we met. We had a great conversation. We connected. He admitted to being very nervous about doing it. But the more we talked, the less fearful he became. But then ultimately, I also think that fear is also what drove him to do it.
Right.
That he saw it as a challenge and thought, well, I've got to conquer this.
Yeah.
He really wanted to do it. He understood that material.
Yeah.
And I think if I could say as a fellow Greek, he also felt like it was a really important thing to do.
Right. And of course, Paul Capses was in the film as well. What an extraordinary a person he is, and his role is absolutely hysterical. And we didn't know Paul all that well at that stage, did we? Like the legend now that he is. Your choices of the actors were amazing.
I was so lucky with Paul, because I remember getting in touch with Paul because I thought he was going to help me with some research for the Johnny Tooler character. So, because Paul was a little bit older than the character that we had written, also a little bit older than the character in the book.
Right.
I meet Paul. I just go, this guy's just amazing. He's just so fantastic. He's so fabulous. Walked away and thought, Paul should be this character. He can play this character.
Yeah.
And so that's how it came about.
Right, okay.
And he's a really look, I adore Paul. I mean, I adore Alex. I adore both of them. Paul is someone I still speak to very regularly. What I think he's gone on to do and what he's achieved has been quite remarkable, totally unique within our cultural landscape.
Yep.
And someone who I think, when I look back on what he did, just brought this incredible dignity to that part, you know.
What about your parents? What did they think about? Because the controversy that was, you know, like raging within the Greek community, you know, like, and they would have been going, "Oh, I can't go down the shops," or were they just going, "Nah, we're so proud of you"?
Well, unfortunately, my mother had passed by the time I made Head On.
Oh, what a shame that she hasn't been around to see your career.
I know, she didn't even get to see Only the Brave.
Oh.
So that's one great regret. However, my father was still alive, and in fact, we had the cast and crew screening of Head On in this very cinema.
What?
And
what, here at the Alex? Oh my God. So that poster over there, over your shoulder,
has been there, you know, for 23 years.
We can feel the ghost of Head On in the building.
But in the days when this was Palace Cinemas, we screened it for the cast and crew. My father sat in a seat sort of halfway down there somewhere. He watched it, and I had tried to give him the heads up, you know, I tried to warn him that it was going to be pretty controversial, pretty full on.
Yeah.
He was ashen-faced by the end. He didn't really want to talk about it. He said to me, give me some thinking time on this. I said, okay. So he rang me about 4 weeks later. I said, look, I have thought about your film.
Yeah.
And he said, and I've worked out what it's about. And I said, well, what do you think it's about? And he said, freedom.
Oh.
So that's what he took from the film. And then, of course, he became incredibly proud, you know, like unbelievably proud. But I think it was, I took his breath away, you know, it really did.
Were you surprised of the success it had here in Australia?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it was completely unexpected. Look, I think the journey started when the film was selected for Directors' Fortnight in Cannes. Now, that was really unexpected.
Yep.
Once we went to Cannes and we saw what the reaction was there, and trust me, it was very divisive and controversial. Virtually anyone under 40 loved it, anyone over 40 hated it.
Okay.
And it was a very talked about film, you know, in 1998 when we were there. So when Palace, who were distributing the film, we were talking about the release here, we started out really running a really great publicity campaign, a community campaign, not just within the Greek community, but within the queer communities. We went out there and spoke about the film, and Alex and I attracted an enormous amount of publicity, and that sort of surprised me. And then when the film released, within 3 or 4 days, I think it started on 17 screens and went to 25 screens in the second week, and I was very surprised that it started playing in the multiplexes.
Yeah.
I did not think it was going to end up at Hoyt's. I did not think it was going to end up at Village, but it did, and it then just really took off. For a lot of reasons, I think, you know.
Yeah.
For a lot of, well, it was an art house film, so there was a thriving art house scene happening, of course, around the country at that time. I think for an Anglo audience, they found it a really fascinating insight into Greek culture. That was the first thing. Okay. So many people, and I'm always amazed. We'd come up and say, you know, I grew up with Greek kids.
Yeah.
We used to play on the street together. Because Greeks had infiltrated, particularly Melbourne, you know, and had, you know, really lived in amongst people, and Anglos had lived with them. I think for a lot of people, they felt they got an insight into that culture that they knew about, but never really had an insider's perspective on. So people were fascinated by that. The second thing is that for a lot of young Greek kids, it was huge. Because what that did was open up conversations with their parents about the way in which that Greek-Australian experience meant that young people were constrained by old ideas about how we should behave, how we should exist in the world, who we should marry, who we should hang out with.
Yep.
There were a lot of constraints for that first, second generation kid migrant coming through.
Yeah.
So this suddenly opened up a conversation with their parents that they'd never been able to have before, just because the film existed.
Yeah.
And then I guess the other element was that for a lot of gay men, this was a huge film for them. You know, it really spoke to them very directly. I think in some way it honoured something about them, I think in a really beautiful way, in a very honest way. And so there were a lot of reasons why people went, wow, this film brings all those things together, you know, very powerfully.
What does it do for you, Anna, as a director? You know, like here you are, you're Venice and Cannes Film Festival, sorry, and you know, like you're being noted, you know, and so early in your career, you know, like all of it, were doors being opened for you?
Look, they did and they didn't. You know, I mean, it was a really interesting experience because you've got to remember that even though I was celebrated and these films were hits, I then didn't choose to go and do mainstream stuff. Doors certainly opened for me to be able to do that.
Right, okay.
So, you know, I remember when, Head On was released by Strand Releasing in the States. I went over and did a publicity tour for them in Los Angeles. I picked up an LA agent who, you know, wanted me to go over there and do very mainstream stuff. And I thought about that, and I thought about whether or not I really wanted to kind of enter that world, that Hollywood world. And after a bit of soul searching, I decided that's not what I wanted to do.
Wow.
Because that's not why I became a filmmaker.
Yep.
I genuinely wanted to do it because I wanted to speak from this outsider place that I knew so well, and I guess I wanted to speak much more from a place of truth and lived experience. So those doors opened for me, but I walked away from them.
Whoa, you're so ballsy. So tell us, what did you do? After that, because there were a couple other feature films you've done.
Look, there were, and so what I did in between the other features that I did, I got offered some TV here, and at that time, we're talking, you know, 20 odd years ago, Australian TV was not cool. You didn't do Australian TV.
Right.
Certainly filmmakers didn't do Australian TV.
Right, okay.
It was just seen as a bit of a nothing space. Yep. But a really terrific producer approached me and she said, I've got this kids show, would you look at it? And I said, okay, sure, you know. So it was called Eugenie, Sandler, PI, and what I loved about it was the central character was a young 16-year-old girl, and she's a private investigator.
Right.
And that really tickled my fancy because I thought, there's a girl at the centre of this. That feels really important.
Yeah.
So I did that show and I had such a good time. And I cast a young Greek-Australian girl in that role. She was 16 at the time, and that gave me a lot of pleasure. So then I ended up doing Secret Life of Us. Yay. And that was a great experience as well.
How many episodes did you do?
I came in, I did a couple of episodes in series 3, and then I helped set up the show in series 4, and I did a couple of episodes there because at the end of episode 3, quite a number of the cast, including Claudia Cavan and others, had left the show, and so they were bringing in new characters.
Yep.
New actors, so I helped them set up the show and worked with those young actors. And so that was a really positive experience, because a lot of the writers who worked on that show, actors like Deborah Mailman, Anna Torv, a whole bunch of actors really got their first big break on that show.
Oh, absolutely.
Writers, directors,
Yep.
everyone, you know, if you look at who made that show back then, they're all still working now. They've all gone on to do amazing things.
Yeah.
And so, but it was also a very vibrant show. It was about, you know, young people living in St Kilda and shared spaces and everything that kind of goes with the territory of being young.
But it was really well done.
Yeah.
You know, that was what got me in. I wanted to see it. I didn't think it was cheesy. It was interesting, and I loved the development of the characters and where they lived, of course. You know, like St Kilda had, and I think I'd only just moved to Melbourne. I'm originally from Adelaide,
Right.
and seeing it all firsthand. You know, living just up the road from St Kilda, now I live in St Kilda. It was a fantastic show.
Well, because it didn't talk down to anyone.
No.
And that was the really critical thing. It was
Yep.
kind of being made by the demographic that it was about.
Yep.
I think that there were some great writers. And look, hats off to people like Amanda Higgs, who was a producer on that show, who really, you know, I've worked with a lot over the years, not just on Secret Life of Us, but other shows as well. And I think that that was a great kind of beginning of, I think, Australian TV starting to come of age.
Yep.
Being a bit more relevant, not being afraid to show things as they are.
And you know, like, not corny stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that was what come of it. Let's go back to your films though. You know, like, because there are a couple of others. What are some of the other films you've made?
Well, the film I made after Head On was a film called The Book of Revelation.
Yep.
So if you think that Head On was risky,
Yes.
The Book of Revelation was even more risky.
Yep.
And it was based on a novel, again, by a wonderful English writer called Rupert Thompson. And he had set this novel in Amsterdam. I read it and was very taken by it. It's a story about a dancer who is abducted by 3 hooded and cloaked women, held in a room for a period of 18 days as a sort of, you know, hostage, sex slave, and then he's released back into the world. And the story really then revolves around his attempts to find these women who never identify themselves to him.
Yep.
So it was, I think, certainly for Australian audiences, I think they felt I'd gone a bit too far. And
I love it.
And Tom Long played the lead role in that.
Yes. Which is a very different path for him.
Extremely different. And again, very courageous to take it on. It was a really bold film. I mean, I think Head On's bold, but gee, so is The Book of Revelation.
Did you all of a sudden, after it gulped and thought, or maybe I have gone too far?
Yeah, I think that was the moment where I thought, oh, maybe I've just pushed this a bit too much. However, having said that, I'm incredibly proud of that film.
And you should be.
It's a little bit like a black sheep within my oeuvre, because a lot of people found it really, really difficult.
Yep.
But it got an incredible reception overseas, yet again. It really, I think, spoke to a lot of very sophisticated viewers who were able to watch the film, because it's really it's not even an experimental film, it's an art film.
Yeah.
And in a way, an art film in the way I remember art films from the 70s and the 80s coming out of Europe, where there's no, that you're prepared to go somewhere that's darker, that is also challenging, that is dealing with ideas in some way, and also I found it really fascinating for me as a woman to tell a story where I guess there was a reversal at the heart of it, you know, where normally we would see, you know, women being bound and gagged by men, whereas I found it a really fascinating thing for me to dwell on, to reverse that, to take that and look at that from a different point of view.
Back in the era, I was obsessed with Ken Russell films.
Yeah.
Were you?
Yeah, totally.
You know, like just hearing you talking about it, I thought myself, I immediately thought of Ken Russell.
That's right. And you know, The Night Porter, I mean, there's a lot of cinema that was really, I think, dealing with those darker, more, for me, really interesting and fascinating questions.
Yeah.
So, again, it was almost like the 14-year-old that was going to the Melbourne Union House and watching those films of the time.
Yeah.
That, in a way, never left me.
Yep.
You know, so when I read Rupert's book, I thought, wow, I really want to do this.
So he had 2 films, you know, quite heavy, and then off you go to Secret Life of Us, which is totally different.
Totally different. But that was the great thing, that I was able to navigate those 2 worlds really effectively. I did another show called The Time of Our Lives, which again is a much lighter show, but also incredibly enjoyable. And you know, I really loved working on that show. I think I ended up doing 4 episodes of that, working with great actors, good scripts, but it much more around family, connections, the way people kind of come together on issues between siblings. I found that really a joy to work on as well.
And then you went into another film.
And then I went into a film called Blessed, and that was a film that I had nurtured over a period of something like 8 years.
So it was a combination. No, I was going to make something up. Then tell us.
So that was based on a play called Who's Afraid of the Working Class. It had been written by Andrew Bavell. Christos Chalkos was involved in that. Patricia Cornelius and Melissa Reeves, and they wrote the play. It was put on at the Melbourne Workers' Theatre way back when. I can't remember even the year that it was put on. And it was a very particular response to the Kennett years, to economic rationalism. That was kind of what motivated that group of writers to tell those collection of stories. I saw it and thought, gee, another interesting thing I really want to do. And I think that as we developed the screenplay, again, very challenging, we had to reimagine the source material, make it into a screenplay, and that was a film that I think, again, is very dear to my heart, because it spoke about the relationship between mothers and children, told both from the children's perspective and also the mother's perspective over the course of a day and night. And also a film, I think, that was, even as I say it, it's kind of remarkable, it was a film about women. And you've got to remember, in 2009, 2010, when we made it, this was pre-Me Too. This was pre the whole thing of, you know, hey, we're not really telling women's stories here. Again, this is what I mean about, if you think about a career, you think about what an audience might want in the moment. And because I've never thought about that and only done the things that I think really matter, well, I guess I was a bit ahead of the curve with that film. But at the same time, it came out of a passion, because I felt, again, it was a really beautiful story to tell, a very important story to tell, and also something that spoke not just about women and kids, but also something about class.
What you mentioned about a bit of the head of the pack there is so true, because I was out walking this morning with a friend and was telling him that I was doing an interview with you today, and that I actually said to this friend, she was a director and doing stuff and ballsy stuff a bit more before, like all these new directors are doing it now and saying, look at the female now, what they're doing. You were doing it way before anyone else, weren't you? There wasn't anyone, not this ballsy stuff that you're doing. And then you jump onto Secret Life of Us, and you go, okay, off on that journey, and then you come back to doing the films that are very, like interesting and cutting edge.
It's interesting because there were a group of women around the time that I emerged that were making films. There was Jane Campion, there was Gillian Armstrong, there were a number, but that all happened because Rachel Perkins. That all happened because we had a really strong affirmative action thing going on within the industry to get women behind the camera, to get them to start telling their stories. So I kind of emerged out of that movement as well. However, I was probably, apart from perhaps Rachel, I was the only non-Anglo, I was the only person who was coming from a very particular place.
And that's what makes you so unique. You were coming from, the others were a little bit more commercial. You weren't. But the thing is, you were doing exactly what you wanted to do. They would have been thinking, hey, I don't know what they were thinking, and the films that they've made are a lot more commercial than what you're doing, where you're like really the edgy stuff. And I have done the edgy stuff, but I don't even see it as edgy. I mean, that's the thing. I see it as truthful, and there's a difference. Or the other way to think about it is I see it as truthful from a different lived experience. And I think one of the reasons why so many people responded to Head On or Blessed or all the work that I've done is they go, thank God I'm seeing something about myself here, that it's not just all white, Anglo, heterosexual, a bunch of colonisers, that there is a kind of another voice that can speak for, or does speak from these other perspectives, or from a place of diversity, or a place of really recognising the truth often of our lives as well. So yes, it's edgy and yes, it's bold, but scratch the surface and gee, there are a lot of people who relate to the stuff that I've been doing. So I always find that really fascinating. There's a book. What's the book all about?
Well, interestingly, Edinburgh University Press have started creating a series called, I think they call the series Visionary Women Filmmakers, and academics have written on a number of female filmmakers over the years. Marguerite Duras, and a Queensland academic has written a book about my work, all my feature films. So
can I just stop you there?
Yeah.
What did you think when you were first approached with this? What was it? It must have been a very whoa moment, because did you see it coming?
No, not at all. But the thing is, this is the weird thing, I didn't get approached, she just wrote the book.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's kind of like somebody says, I'm going to write a book about this filmmaker's work, and that's what it is. So,
are you happy with it?
Look, I think it's terrific, yeah. I think it's amazing.
And have you spoken to her?
I've never spoken to her.
Whoa.
Yeah. I felt that what I found most interesting is having a person independently, without me talking to her, writing a book about my work. And it's a serious piece of work because she examines all the films that I've made. It is slightly academic, but not that difficult to read. She's got a light touch in the way she speaks about it. But it's a really interesting book, and I think it's fascinating to see somebody else's take on your work.
Absolutely,
So in that sense, it was a kind of a scary read, but also I also thought, oh, that's really interesting.
Because it is, especially considering that she wasn't speaking to you through the process, and you're like, I'm thinking, oh, I didn't see that in myself, or yes, that's exactly it. Nah, she got a little bit wrong.
But she made some very interesting connections.
Okay.
But what she also did is that, I've been around for a while now, and I've done a lot of interviews, and so she definitely sourced interviews that I'd done. Which she quoted. So I think in some respects there's a lot I've said over the years on the public record, and she was able to source that stuff and use it as she felt she needed to. So it was good. It was lovely, to think, oh, someone's written a book about my work. It's kind of cool. You know?
And so you got the copy. That's how you found out about it.
Yep.
I find that absolutely fascinating that
It is.
that somebody could go off and do that.
Yeah.
Wow, it's usually when somebody's dead or something, isn't it?
Well, I was kind of pleased. I thought, thank God that she's written this before at least I'm alive,
Well, let's jump a bit forward. There is a series that the ABC have been showing, and it's about the tragedies of the bushfires that we have here so frequently, and it's called Fires. You did a couple of episodes. Whose concept and who wrote a lot of it? What's the man's name?
So the man who created it, along with Belinda Chaco, was Tony Ayres, and they both had a very strong response to, like we all did, I guess, the bushfire tragedies that happened in 2019. They wanted to respond to it very quickly, which is what they did.
Yep.
They gathered a team of writers,
Yep.
and in a very short space of time, created 6 stories that all speak to that experience. And I think the interesting thing that they did is they wanted to tell that, talk about it through individual stories, so that each story is discrete. So, and also through characters and very intimate character stuff. People finding themselves in certain situations, and so that's how the whole show came about. The ABC jumped on it as soon as Tony and Belinda pitched it to them, and then they approached me to do episode 2 and episode 5.
What happens in 5?
Well, 5 is a story where we meet 2 women who are in a same-sex relationship, and they are literally in the middle of a fire coming upon their homestead and having to actually work out how to survive it, basically. So it's a pretty full-on episode. And then we discover, I don't know if I'm going to spoil it, but then we discover that it's Christmas. Of course, it's Christmas time, which was true at that time. And we discover that, in fact, they've just broken up. So the story, their story, really takes place over the whole episode.
Yeah.
And there's a real tussle between the 2 of them.
Right.
Will they finally separate, or will they get back together again?
Yeah.
And there's another continuing story between the 2 firefighters, the young firefighters, who are introduced in the first episode, and they're the only continuing strand through the whole series.
Right. Okay. With it being fire, have you ever worked in a situation where there's fire, and controlling all of that? You would have had to, if you've never worked in a situation like this before, have you?
No, I've certainly worked in high intensity kind of, slightly dangerous things, but I hadn't ever.
Did that freak you out a little bit, thinking?
I remember when they first offered it to me, I thought, oh my God, does that mean, it didn't really, because the key to the show really was the special effects that we used, and the special effects men and women who create these things like spot fires or whatever. They've got all this amazing technical
I'm sure.
stuff that can be used.
Yep.
The first episode used a new dream screen technology, which I didn't end up using in episode 5.
Is that like the screens we've got behind us?
A little bit, yeah. Whereas I did it in sort of more for real, if you like.
Oh, risky.
So I was again more adventurous, but we had special effects. We had then VFX that we used, but I also sourced a lot of stock footage. So a lot of the footage that you'll see in episode 5 is real footage.
Right.
And then it was a question of planning it all and intercutting it all together to create what was in the episode an incredibly intense experience.
And so it was footage the ABC had
all over the place.
From everywhere.
A lot of it was lot of it was ABC News footage.
Wow.
There is a lot of footage around what happened during that period.
Yep.
There's a lot of footage over time, but the summer 2019 there is horrendous footage. Of what really happened, the devastation in terms of landscape, incredible footage of firefighters fighting fires, the intensity of the heat, the smoke. There's a lot of stuff around.
Now, you've just been involved in it's opened at the Sydney Film Festival here out west. Tell us about it, because I know absolutely nothing about it, because I wouldn't, because it's all very new.
Well, it's all very new because it opened the Sydney Film Festival, which is a great thing for everybody involved in the making of the film.
And you did it through lockdowns.
Yeah, we shot through COVID, as we did fires actually.
Yes.
So, it's been a strange COVID.
So you've worked through?
Yeah.
Wow.
I've had more COVID tests than I care to think about.
Do you?
Really.
Every time you go and set
temperature checks and masks, and so lots of protocols that we had to have in place to keep everybody safe and each other safe.
Yep.
But with Here Out West, it was a really interesting project. It came to me because they were looking for, and in the end they ended up with 5 female directors who we all directed a couple of chapters each of this chapter film. It's an anthology film. It was created by 8 emerging writers, all from different backgrounds. So one of the chapters I did was from a young Chilean writer, another was from an Indian writer, a Bengali to be precise, Vietnamese story, Chinese story, Kurdish story. There are 9 languages in the film.
Wow.
Which I think is quite unique.
Yeah.
And that all came about because there's a really interesting organisation in Sydney called Co-Curious. They've been based in Western Sydney for quite a few years.
Oh, okay.
And they actually nurture young and emerging creatives who live in Western Sydney. They come from different backgrounds, diverse backgrounds, and what they've done over the years is help those young people find voices. And this particular project was set up so that then experienced talent could come on board and work with them to develop their ideas and make it all happen.
Oh,
so it's quite a really a fantastic initiative.
Yeah.
And I think those writers originally thought, well, we might be lucky to get a web series out of this or something.
Yeah.
Opened the Sydney Film Festival, getting a cinema release in February. So it was quite a challenging journey, but a great one to be part of.
So your career's just moved along nicely, hasn't it?
That's right.
There's never been, like 5-year break where you've been doing nothing.
No, I've had some downtime. That's true. There have been.
I can't see where it would be. Like for a weekend or something.
Well, I've had to take a break, but no, I do have some downtime, and I think that. And so what I've done in that downtime is the other thing I do is that I have taught at the Film and TV School in Sydney, the National Film and TV School. I've taught at Melbourne University, RMIT, Swinburne. I really love teaching, and I love being able to work with younger filmmakers, to nurture them, to help them.
Oh, what you could bring to the table for like just seeing your body of work, it would be enough.
So that's the other thing that I do that I really enjoy.
So there is no downtime.
Not much.
All right, well, I'm just going to finish up on Head On because something quite exciting has just happened with Head On. There's this thing called Blu-Ray. What is going on?
Well, what's going on is that Umbrella Entertainment are re-releasing Head On Blu-ray.
Yep.
They've put a new sleeve on it. I say a few things on a video commentary.
Did you enjoy doing that?
Look, it was a really strange experience because I hadn't seen the film for a long time. I think that I found it a very emotional experience, and I was very surprised that I did.
Yeah.
And so I was watching the film and just falling in love with all the actors again and remembering moments. So it was good. I loved doing it.
Yeah.
And I could probably do another one and I'd say something completely different.
Yep.
It's a strange experience in the sense that I did this thing 23 years ago. It still has this incredible life. And I feel very proud of that, you know, really proud. But I'm particularly proud of when I see those actors and what truth they give every moment.
Yeah.
I know how passionate they were about making the film, how much of themselves they invested in it.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, that's what I mean. It was quite an emotional experience.
Yeah.
But it's still, and perhaps as a filmmaker, this is what I'm most proud of. It's a really good film.
Yeah.
I had an ambition to shoot it in a certain way. I wanted it to feel lush and rich. I wanted it to feel like it had scope, but I also wanted it to feel very intimate. And so in that sense, as a filmmaker, I still think, you know, that I'm pretty pleased with how it worked out.
Oh, well, congratulations on that, the whole re-release. And it's also on streaming services as well as we speak. So, you know, like, Anna, thank you for the chat today. There's so much more we could have spoken about. Well, you know, like, we might turn the cameras off and keep on chatting. But congratulations on your extraordinary career. And I can't wait to see you after your break. There won't be a break. I bet you anything that you've got something brewing and then you're going off to plan. Have you got something in the pipeline? Don't tell us.
I have got something brewing. Yes. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. I'm David Hunt and you've been watching The Art Hunter. See you real soon.